there was a point where you were deciding between electrowave and electroclash. What did Clash capture that no other word did?
Well, Clash was, was more punk.
I was just directly speaking about sex, which I think that in the year 2001 isn't so shocking.
Mr. Larry T, how you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. A post I did on IF Space Invaders Are Smoking Grass sparked a big debate about the first Electroclash song. And so I've been dying to like really talk about that with someone ever since then. And since you literally coined the term,
I don't know that much about IF, though I could say that if I did my what I view as the Electroclash sound, IF probably did beat out, Miss Kitten and the Hacker for me by a short amount of time. You know what I mean? But a lot of records by Flying Lizards and Art of Noise that predated Electroclash in some respects. But it's
yeah.
funny. I found IF later. It was probably like a year into my big club night in Williamsburg when we had all the local acts and there was a lot of music to pick from at that point. More music, not a lot, but more. And then I found IF later, and I said, oh yeah, this sounds like Fischerspooner.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah. So that's,
go ahead.
well, no, that's where I was going to start with. Like, a lot of people consider that the first Electroclash record, and I think it was that buzzy bass that he used on that record that really defined the sound. And I guess that maybe it came from like acid house, that kind of acidic, acid fried bass sound, but
Right.
it was the way he used it maybe on that record that just kind of influenced a lot of what was to come after it. But he doesn't consider it Electroclash. He considers that song Electro Revival. I guess what's your take on that?
Being a DJ in the 80s, in Atlanta, Georgia, we had the best access to European 12 inches and any probably better than New York at the time, just because there weren't as many people hunting for the same records like it would be in New York. And I don't really recall that particular Fisher Spoony kind of Electroclash really occurring in the 80s or 90s, even though IF might say that it was a retro-inspired kind of thing. I don't really recall that, just like I don't recall Peaches' brand of in-your-face sexuality with hairy legs and ambisexual, bisexual, trisexual. That I don't remember that being something that was really an 80s thing, though people would say that is so 80s, sex and synthesizers, and I was like, I was there. We didn't have that kind of energy back in the day, and nor the freedom to for people to say whatever they wanted to say, and which to me was in the politics. There were politics. I always loved the politics about the 80s, and I do get that Chicks on Speed, for example, that brand of anti-capitalistic, anti-woman hating kind of thing, anti-misogynist kind of vibe.
Why don't you mind your own business? Why don't you mind your own business?
I think that for me was more of what was happening in my version of Electroclash, because DJ Hell had a very different take on Electroclash, and it was very much techno DJs and techno producers giving it a try, trying to do some sort of weird, it was more like weirdo techno more than it was what I visioned as Electroclash, because Electroclash to me was very political. It had a strong female voice that more women, I'm going to put this out there, more women got in the DJ electronic music game during Electroclash than any other time in electronic music, period.
Yeah.
If you look at where
Yeah.
everything comes back to, and even mainstream female, all the cool mainstream female artists, even if you want to add Lady Gaga or Charlie XCX or a Robin or The Knife or anything that really was like serious electronic music, you know, Electroclash was the beginning of that freedom for women to be in electronic music. Before then, it was like, what were they gonna do? Maybe the sisters from Australia that looked like, two members of the Housewives of Beverly Hills, with like, Paris Hilton kind of sexy girl DJ vibe that plays at, sports clubs.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's really cool. So that's the thing is if fashion, like women empowerment was a big part of it. Space Invaders, there was nothing about that side of it to it. It had the sound, but it didn't have the aesthetic of. It wasn't female. It wasn't. There was nothing, fun or free about it. Thematically, that's not where he was going with this. So
The sound bank was influential, but if you really think about the impact of Electroclash and like what were the other Electroclash hits, you would think more of like Felix the House Cat and Miss Kitten. And they didn't just, the hacker kind of got stuck in that kind of retro synth vibe, but for the most part, Miss Kitten didn't. She struck out at all with all new sounds and was basically, if you went to see Miss Kitten, you would get a techno set. And then she would just sing the vocal line of one of her Electroclash hits over top of a techno record, and the crowd would go wild, and then it'd be back to where I was like, yeah. The European version was a really different thing because the American version was very political. The Canadian version, the Peaches and even Tiga, I remember him and DJ Hell would say, they were bisexual. And Tiga's about as bisexual as I'm bisexual, meaning not at all. And I mean, he has like 4 kids. It's like he's been with his wife for 100 years. But it was a moment where people said, you know what? It's important that we not fall for that old us and them kind of things. Because now it's back to sports. EDM is sports as usual. It's a bunch of soccer. It's like soccer league kind of, everybody's really pretty, and you do better if you have a look, and if you're a good look, and if you're heterosexual. Period.
Yeah.
I mean, the game is now, there was a moment where I guess Danny Tenaglia and Junior Vasquez and the legends of DJs, there was a lot of gay members. But I mean, do we even know if Green Velvet or Carl Cox are even gay? Because they're certainly not going to tell anyone.
Yeah,
And
interesting.
that wasn't something that was happening in Electroclash. The door was kind of open, and it said that it was open to girls, gays, and theys.
Yeah.
Way before it was something on the news.
So yeah, you mentioned Felix the House Cat, and I of course, for me personally, I think of Ready to Wear, and that just is funny that the theme of that song and just kind of about fashion and getting ready, whatever, because I think of Prince's Makeup. And I kind of think of that as like this proto Electroclash song. It's about fashion, it's feminine, it's electro, and there's like a bit of there's a bit of satire to it. And so I guess I kind of wanted to ask that, like, were there any elements for Electroclash in your mind that became non-negotiable? Like, did it have to have a little satire? Did it have to have queer energy? Was it ever primarily about a sonic formula?
No, I don't think it had to have satire. It didn't have to be queer. A lot of the songs we played really didn't have that energy. Most of the music we played that didn't have that energy, but it was amazing when. It's like Chicks on Speed. They're one of my favorites of the genre. They had a lot of really killer songs, and they did talk politics through a lot of their thing, whether it was Eurotrash Girl remake, where it's just like where they kind of played up the stupid girl idea, and that's not all that exists, or is that kind of that kind of a girl. There's other kinds of sharp intellectual girls, and that's why the girls love the format, and why so many of the big pop stars of today, they'll all have an Electroclash song. Ariana Grande had an Electroclash song on her new one. Omar Apollo had an Electroclash song. I mean, even Chappell Roan knows what Electroclash is, clearly. The dude DJs hated Electroclash when it first arrived because it was a direct threat to trance, and this hyper soccer league kind of DJing style, right? And so, but then, after they said, oh, well, the graphics are really good. So suddenly all the trance guys would have Electroclash graphics, and they would all try to hit up people like Peaches or anybody that was close, vaguely connected to the electro movement or indie dance, as it turned into kind of.
That evolution is interesting.
It really wasn't something that a dance music world wanted to encourage.
Okay, so I guess walk me through that timeline of you hearing. Well, you said you found IF later. I guess I'm kind of curious if that song came around '97. You coined the term in 2000, and then the festivals of 2001.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty much the timeline, I would think. Or maybe the word came in 2001 because I made it for the festival.
So what song do you remember first hearing and being like, this is the sound, I want to call this Electroclash? Like, do you remember that moment?
I found 3 artists pretty much at the same time. I went to the Jewish Center in Manhattan to see Peaches perform, which was a great show. I mean, I wasn't entirely sold when I went to the show because I couldn't figure it out entirely why she needed to go on for an hour and a half with something that would have made a really good 30-minute show. And but I knew that was a rock star for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, she played at the Jewish Center in Midtown Manhattan, and so I went there thinking, what the hell is this? And she was what the hell. But I remember thinking, wow, this is she's doing it herself. She made her stuff, and then at the same time, I was working on a girl duo, these 2 sisters, and they were called a Department of Sound Engineering, or DOSE. I was new in recovery, so it wasn't a bold breakthrough sound. They were like trip hop kind of.
Okay.
And their sister was in a band called Chicks on Speed, and I thought, oh, that sounds terrible, but then I saw that they were on the cover of The Face. And The Face has always been one of those places where I know they know what's going on in the world of culture, music, art, and culture. And then also, one of my friends from a recovery said, oh, you have to go see Fischerspooner. And again, I thought, oh, that's horrible. Who wants to see anything called Fischerspooner? And I went, and it blew my head off. And it was kind of the first time I ever heard anything like the IF.
Yeah.
But they brought, because they had 10 dancers on stage, they would get changed on stage into their new outfits, delivered by Dior. And then they had all fresh white shirts by Dior, and they would get changed into them, all the dancers, and then the lights would go down, and it would be like an explosion, and they had blood caplets, and that would spurt down the white, fresh, brand new Dior shirts. And it was so brilliant, and I remember thinking, okay, I can see why everybody said, you have to come help these guys. Because even though I was new in recovery, I didn't think that I would be much use to anyone still at that point musically. But when I saw that, I went, wow, I hope this is what the future of music looks like.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. So this idea of women talking about chicks on speed, this clash of these Dior shorts, but then splashing blood on them. There was a point where you were deciding between electro wave and electroclash. What did Clash capture that no other word did?
Well, Clash was more punk because of the group, The Clash, and also it was a clash. Some of the stuff we played at that time was like the Detroit Grand Poobahs, which was like old school Detroit electro, but like filtered through hip hop.
I know you wanna do it, so we can make sandwiches.
Up tempo hip hop, So for us, it was like we used whatever we could to get people dancing, and then when we did the Fischerspooner show, DJ at the Pyramid Club, which was way too small, and it was the coldest day of the year, and there was literally a line around the block of people freezing in the freezing cold, and the guy who would normally let the club be filled to capacity wouldn't let in more than X amount of people. It was one of those kind of oh shit kind of moments, and so at that point, DJ Hell DJ'd, and it was like a techno set. And then there was this other DJ that ran the record store, and he did not give two fucks about beat matching. And I remember going, how is this possible? You can DJ without beat matching? It was like, but I said, but everybody was having a blast because it was just so. He didn't give a fuck about of it being perfect, and so really at that point, to me, that was like something that introduced me to the whole indie dance aesthetic too. At the same time as when I hear indie sleaze, for most people, especially Electroclash artists, that is like a nail on a chalkboard. But for me, I totally get that. That indie dance with the don't give a fuck attitude more permeated my music than it did other people's. And even though there are some songs I did that definitely sound like Electroclash from that era, like the one used in Party Monster. They used my song in that movie, and it was very Electroclash. And my girl group Wit was my idea. It was like a girl group, and they were, oh my God, the guy from LCD Sound System married one. Everybody was hot for them, but wanted to hate on them too because they were too hot for Electroclash. Electroclash, you should look like the adult with the collared shirt up to your neck, and like it was like and Miss Kitten wasn't exactly like she wasn't a hot babe in some respects. She was kind of that new sexy that Peaches was, that kind of like, what is this look? It's not like she's not dressing for the male gaze. You know what I mean? She was dressing, and her boyfriend was a weird, tall techno-punk guy, and but she looked like a lesbian, and for me that moment came where it was like, where the prototype for a new generation of female DJs that were just, they don't look like Playboy bunnies there to serve sports stars at an NHL, nightclub in New York. It was like a totally different thing where women just said, "Yeah, this doesn't work for me anymore,"
Interesting. So that kind of Chappell Roan look, like that, the makeup and kind of the craziness of it. Do you feel like that's kind of
not so Electroclash, but definitely Club Kid inspired, I would think. Not so much Electroclash, but in some of her songs I hear some Electroclash wizardry going on in there. Just the sound bank of Electroclash, that kind of that old school retro synth kind of vibe.
Okay, yeah, that's amazing. So the difference you're describing, this she wasn't doing it for the male gaze. There's this band from Barcelona called Las Bistecs. They came out of art school, these two girls, and they called their sound electro disgusting. Did you ever listen to Las Bistecs?
I don't remember Lost Beasts. I think I saw the name, but I don't know if I really. I mean, there was so much talent going around. It was like the first time that the internet became the A&R team, so that there was a lot of really slick sounding stuff that you could play in the club. So a lot of the rougher, more punk edged indie vibe ones, they didn't really fit immediately into the Electroclash format because we had clubs where people wanted to dance. So some of the more raw indie sounding electro, or the ones that weren't as polished, even though they might have aesthetically been really on target, a lot of them, we had a choice of of how to go with it, and it started going mainstream almost immediately because Europe just loved the electro vibe, because they got that they understood it more because they had more of a history with electronic music than America, which just said, oh, 80s sexy, they're trying to be sexy, the take on
They didn't get the
America.
movement.
To be honest, even the DJ Hell thing, he kind of understood it because he was making money off of it. But a lot of the as much as it was a huge influence, more, I wasn't aware when I would come through Berlin. I just thought, oh, it's kind of small compared to what's really happening in electronic techno music in Berlin. But looking back now, I realize that all the promoters that are big in Berlin, a lot of them came out of that time when electro and indie dance and fidget and all that started happening. That was when they got into the game because they realized, oh, it's do it yourself. Anyone can do this.
Mm-hmm.
So I found a lot of people from that are now big stars in the music scene. That's when they got in, is because it was the first do-it-yourself kind of electronic music where you didn't need an expensive studio and you didn't need a programmer. You could just fiddle around and come up with something really cool if you had a good imagination, which, of course, there's only a limited amount of people, and once a sound is sucked into the mainstream, then it's hard to keep reinventing it.
Yeah, that's the thing, sucked into the mainstream. Because I had some fan questions, and someone asked what led Electroclash to get so shiny and polished by the end. They thought even Fischerspooner and Peaches eventually went that direction, but I think it just kind of happens. It's just an evolution of popularity or whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, the original Peaches was very was rough and punk, and it that was one of the things that got it in the door, is the fact that they weren't really trying to. Yeah, there was some remixes that we played of Peaches, you know what I mean? But now, at the time, I remember myself thinking, oh, I should do this, I should do this in a certain way, because the Chicks on Speed's productions got more professional, and because it wasn't just people fooling around on GarageBand. Suddenly they had competition to they needed to up their game to keep people playing them and keep themselves in the game. So then Peaches, started doing some more things. But I mean, but now looking back on it, playing, the some of the early Peaches songs, which are like, real, just real minimal. They sound really good still when I hear somebody that has the nerve to play that, or Fischerspooner, which doesn't mix in very easily with anything, and I go, oh, right, the time is back. The time has come again for a revolution of sounds of sorts. And yes, it will sound different. It'll sound like Brutalismus 3000. It'll sound like Sextile. There'll be new people that come along, Confidence Man, or, there'll be all these new people that do it differently. And there'll be a lot of people that try to be adult, but they just aren't cool. They just like the sound and they say, yeah, this is my sound. And they go out with the husband and wife go on the road. And they're like, you go, oh my God, they're normies,
Yeah.
imitating the
Too
sound
safe.
bank of this punk ass couple from Detroit who were,
Yeah.
and you know what, I'll put it out there. These early Electroclash stars, they were a pain in the ass, a lot of them. And that's the reason I liked them, because they were like a stick in the eye to what was happening in trance and tribal house and that kind of pots and pans kind of, a dance cheese that was like had taken over the dance music world.
Yeah. No, makes sense. So you feel like Electroclash that influenced indie sleaze, hyper pop? Do you think all those things were kind of stemmed from the original Electroclash sound
No,
or
but I do
scene?
think it was the attitude that's what I'm trying to say. Because IF, there hasn't been a million people that sound like IF or Fisher Spooner, really, and yes, it did. I mean, we used to play Benny Benassi's before it was even really out. I got a copy of it and I caned it because it sounded so weird for the time. And
Mm-hmm.
it kind of fit in, but it wasn't like Electroclash vibe. It was like a new kind of thing. And then Fidget really made a lot of sense after that. The Too Many DJ remixes and the Soul Wax and that new generation of remixes that started rolling out, that the Crookers and
Yeah.
it kind of went in a new direction, which I really liked too, because it was chaotic and noisy, but lacking any sort of lyrical statement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
You know what I
exactly.
mean?
Okay. Yeah, for sure. That
And so
the
my DNA has always been, it's always been political, even if it seems like indie sleaze of like, do I look like a slut by Avenue D, which was like a MySpace generation. Every bad kid on MySpace had, do I look like a slut? And it was huge in England. And it was like,
Mhm.
it really wasn't a great production of mine, but it worked. And just because the message was so in your face of having, just like my song Supermodel by RuPaul, 30 years later, it still generates 40,000 a year, and it's because it was political and it had something to say, and it said a lot more than, work girl on the runway, you look gorgeous, smile, make love to the camera. There was another story going on there, and to me, that was what I really liked about the original Electroclash thing, is there was another story going on other than just beats.
Yeah, and I think I really feel like Prince kind of nailed that a little bit on makeup. I love some of the lines like "Smoke a cigarette, I'm not ready yet. I hate to do my hair." Like just these fun lines that really seem like the DNA of, and not as political, right? Like some of those political statements were much bigger, but I love that idea of kind of pushing back on the male gaze and that sort of thing and what's expected and that kind of revolting, like embracing the revolt of some of it. Um,
Yeah, I mean, not all Electroclash was great, and certainly, Mountain Sims and Felix the House Cat were very much influenced by Prince, right?
mhm,
And
mhm,
I love both of their I like both of their sounds, and I really like that of such a white genre that they had done so well within that, and it wasn't as diverse as it could be, because it wasn't particularly funky as a genre. It was kind of
uh,
Teutonic, more European, German than it was, Memphis, Tennessee. I was a DJ since the mid '80s in Atlanta, and we would mix Shaka Khan into the Smiths, because that's
oh
just what
wow.
was happening at the time. It was like a big mix, and then we had a lot of European dance records that we played that were like the earlier, or the precursor to house music. It was like
Yeah,
electronic
yeah.
beats. You know what I mean?
hmm
So, and
Telex.
yeah, there was lots of stuff. There was so much. believe it or not, that it's hard for me to even remember what they were. But also, acts like Shriekback kind of defined how indie dance, or our LCD sound system, was weirdly, inspired sometimes by these weird goth dance acts, or it was just a big mishmash. And at a time, I felt lucky to have come up as a DJ when electro, disco, house, hip hop, and indie dance was all being fucked with at the time. They were all like new. It was like you could literally. I went from disco to nothing but new wave. I became the new wave DJ in Atlanta, and with the B-52s, and was best friend with Michael Stipe before REM. And my first group had produced the B-52s Rock Lobster 52 Girls single before they were signed to Warner Brothers. And
Wow.
so my history to me was always like a mosh of those things. And of course, I'm like, I am the expert on queer culture in music. With REM, Michael was my best friend, and the B-52s, were tight. And they gagged when they found out I was in the band that had produced them, and and then RuPaul shows up at my house, so it's like, for me, music is a lot more. And that era was a lot more inventive, and that you just never knew what the fuck was going to come out the next week when you went to the record store. And now that it is not that. You know exactly what's going to be available when you go to the record store and you say, "What do you think?" It's like, yeah, it's a shallow house. It says, is it really good? Is it memorable? It says, it's good enough. Maybe I could play it at Panorama Bar at Berghain, But it's like the time of musical surprises are over, and of course I don't give up. I have a whole collection of trans people making electronic music, because from my partner's shows here in Berlin when I was living there, I said, wow, there's some wild talent that's not being represented. I will do an Electroclash tour this next summer. So, and that I will enjoy it. When I travel, my friends will take me, they'll rent a private boat and take me down the Seine and park in front of the Eiffel Tower, and they will take me to all the coolest things imaginable, because Electroclash was always the cool people. And I'll do events at museums like the MoMA and the LACMA and the KW and the coolest museums. That's what what my history is opening the door for more now than like me see how good I can boogie while throwing down some songs, that people don't know really sound like something they could have heard 20 years ago.
Yeah. Well, do you have plans to release some of your rare stuff on streaming, like Wit, or the stuff you did for Shampoo Horns?
Oh, yeah, you're good. Shampoo Horns. Yeah, I assume that the universe will take care of that at some point. I don't really, that to me doesn't excite me so much, even though some of the stuff that I put on Shampoo Horns was kind of out there, especially the techno punk group, the Hustlers. But I'm not really sure that's or how important that is. People are hitting me up for Wit rarities, because they should have been a pop band. They should have been a pop sensation, because they were so stunning. And and you know what, it was alcohol that kind of ruined that. I was sober, and the lead singer was just grumpy from being having hangovers, and and putting on it was just tough. That because I really enjoyed doing it. And and we shot a really great video for Number One, a song that never came out, and that was co-produced by Vince Clarke of Depeche Mode, And we did this amazing video, spent a lot of money on doing this video. And the lead singer, she said, oh, we can't release this. I don't feel pretty in this particular video. And she looked hot. Everybody thought she looked hot.
Yeah. So that video's in the vault.
A tape. And it's like, and I'll talk about frustrating because Mark Bell, who produced LFO and Bjork, like some of Bjork's best stuff, and like everybody, he did some Depeche Mode too, and he did some work for us, and Vince Clarke, who started Depeche Mode, and Erasure and Yazoo, he did a song with us, and it was so frustrating to know that I couldn't move the project forward because drugs and alcohol, and I was sober, and it was so painful.
So yeah, it was actually a fan who asked about wit and the shampoo horns. So when people ask you for these wit rarities, are you able to point them anywhere to hear them, or?
I even have a copy of number one.
Okay.
Maybe I do. Maybe I'm sure if I dig around hard enough, I could find something, just like I know somewhere in my files, I have the original demo for Supermodel for RuPaul, which has just sold 5 million records. So I know somewhere, I think I might have the Mark Bell version of number one.
That'd be sick. That'd be cool.
Yeah. But it's still,
Okay.
it's just, I wouldn't know. And especially right now, I'm in the process of doing another music publishing deal that's, kind of a buy the home kind of deal. And, and so for me, I kind of like stirring up trouble for the future as opposed to, becoming a heritage act that that goes to like because there's lots of festivals now for like groups like the guy Flock of Seagulls who did I Ran and Human League and and the Pet Shop Boys and where I could get on heritage act tours for new wave and dark wave, because a lot of the new synth guys wind up on those lineups because there are some really cool new synth artists, synthy, artists that post Electroclash that have jumped onto those festivals because the money's so good. But I don't really see that that's going to, be that inspiring to me.
2026, next year marks the 25th anniversary of the Electroclash Festival. And I guess I was kind of curious, one of the last questions I had for you is, would you still call it Electroclash today? I guess if the movement was to start now, or would 2025, Larry, would you choose something different based on just today's music landscape and whatnot?
Well, yeah, I mean, when it comes right down to it, all the best things last for a short period of time, and they're rinsed. Whether it's grunge, it's the start of something. The first couple years into Nirvana and all those Soundgarden and all those bands before they all OD'd, and I mean that was when it was like a really vital influence. And to me, Electroclash is the same thing. It's just the first wave is the wave that's of interest, and I wouldn't necessarily want to. It's not like I really want to bring Electroclash back.
Yeah.
And to me, I think the excitement would be in people that I could see people that take techno and put politics on top of that, or trans girls that, the new Electroclash would be a totally different kind of thing, and you'd go, yeah, and people would say, oh, that's so Electroclash, and Charlie XCX's Von Dutch was very much an Electroclash thing, but it didn't have the same meaning that Electroclash had when it started. And I love what Charlie XCX does with it, because that to me is where the vibe of Electroclash would go, is that because she's always she's been willing to do lots of trash over the years, and and she knows how to throw down a hook like no one else. I mean, I'm very impressed with her talents. She used to perform at my clubs before she got signed, though, and she was great even then before she was signed.
Yeah.
I just remember thinking, wow, these songs are too fucking much. So, but yeah, I mean, when people take what's happening now and then filter it through Electroclash, and I mean, she soaked up a little Sophie along the way, and future pop, and she soaked up everything. It's not a strict Electroclash album, but the vibe and the radical spirit of like her mix, her DJ mix, where they just shredded all her stuff and put it onto the dance floor. To me, that was really inventive and felt like, oh, yay, it's like, this is the future coming, just like what maybe Madonna did when she did Ray of Light, and it was like people were saying she put techno on her album, when of course it really wasn't traditional techno. It was her spin on techno.
Like, it's cool to hear you talk about Charlie XCX kind of carrying some sort of torch. And do you think Sophie was headed in that direction as well? Did you like where she was going? Was it kind of aligned with the politics you cared about?
Well, of course, she's trans, and so she was a huge inspiration for trans electronic music people. But also, some of it I kind of missed at the moment, like like Charlie XCX kind of took the hook out of "It's Okay to Cry," and I remember at the time thinking, yeah, I'm not really sure about "It's Okay to Cry." Until now, I look at it and I go, "Whoa, that's crazy shit!" That she went out there, and some of her pastiche for like the Madonna, stealing the Madonna hook for that one song she did on that album. But then you heard Arca kind of did the same sort of thing with taking a Madonna riff and doing the same thing. So, I mean, I do see now they were probably more of an inspiration than at the time. I just remember, again, as a DJ that has to play out and get people dancing, they made a conscious effort not to make songs that were too easy to digest.
Yeah.
I love face shopping.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Larry. I'll be in touch, man. Thank you so much. Have a great day.